Hello again. We're back with another awesome trailer for you. This time, we're hearing from Melissa, who runs the Skylark Bell podcast. Enjoy.
Welcome to the mysterious world of the Skylark Bell. Our story begins on the outskirts of a small town called Pocket, where Margaret Phaeton, better known as Magpie, must connect a series of unexplained events, psychic visions, and century-old folktales before the mysterious silence hanging over the abandoned farm at Meadow Lane spreads to the entire town. The Skylark Bell is a fiction podcast in serial format, with new chapters every Friday, and bonus episodes that recount real-life paranormal experiences. Find the Skylark Bell on all major platforms and at theskylarkbell.com. I'm Melissa Oliveri. Thank you for listening.
Time I've done that.
I was not recording.
Come on. Is it recording?
It's recording.
Action. The dog has just army crawled under the table
He doesn't like
and
the
is
clapping.
between my knees.
Yeah, we got
Hello.
40 seconds in there before I realised I hadn't actually pressed record. Only 45 seconds. We could have been like a full 45 minutes
Oh,
in.
chaos.
After just saying like, oh, post-production, Kieran takes care of things.
Hi. Hello. You want to come say hi?
Yeah, the dog's pissed off.
Hello. Oh, that's the closest you've ever gotten to the microphone.
Did anybody hear the dog grumble?
You gonna say hi? Yay! Being mauled by vicious dog.
Okay, I'll remove how long that took when we got there.
He's trying to nibble my sleeves. He's trying to nibble my sleeves.
Don't get him riled up.
Okay, that's enough. Sit. Hello, hello.
Hello. We're back again. We hope you enjoyed the trailer.
We hope you enjoyed the trailer from the Skylark Bell. Melissa's awesome. Very talented. Storyteller, musician, all-round human being. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to share your podcast here.
Yes, you should go and check it out.
You absolutely should. You should go and check her out on podcast players. You should check her out on Instagram. And you should say hi and that you like the podcast.
You could say we sent you. That'd be nice.
Yeah, you could say that if you wanted to.
You could say that. That'd be fun.
Or you could just heap praise upon her because she deserves it.
Heap it by the barrow, fool.
We have already tried recording this intro. We weren't recording.
Yes, I don't know. I just don't know what's happening anymore. I've kept some. The dog said hi. I don't want to just delete that footage in the last bit.
In the last bit.
And the fad hey who.
We are having a hard time.
Yes. Things in the old personal situation are not at their best.
No.
But we're here and we're excited to be bringing the podcast to you, as always.
This is a joy and truly an escape from what would otherwise be a very difficult time.
Yes. But we won't dwell on that.
No.
And I've brought something.
So have I.
I've brought two things. Haha.
Well, it's not a competition, Kieran.
That's just because I'm winning.
At least it's not now.
Yeah, it's not now that I'm losing.
Okay, well, do you want to do one and then I do one and then you do one? Or should I do my one and then you do two?
I'll start with my one.
Okay.
Well, I mentioned the Icelandic Christmas elves in one of the previous episodes. We recorded them 2 weeks ago. I forget which one. But I said they have some funny names. So I went and got our pack of cards who feature some of them. And they're the Icelandic Yule lads. And they're a Christmas elf. So do you want to hear some of my favourites?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Well, I didn't put them in order. But there's one just called Meat Hook.
That sounds ominous.
Which is a bit metal. There's the Door Sniffer. Which is a bit weird, I thought.
Sniff a door?
I know. There's also the Sheep Warrior.
You can't do that. Dogs do that, they'll get shot.
The Door Slammer. Very spooky.
Well, that could be you.
Yeah, true. Maybe, is it ominous door slamming, or is it just...
It's less spooky and more just irritating.
Yeah. The Sausage Stealer. Don't let that guy in your house.
That's definitely you.
Yeah.
Or Odin.
And then there's a trifecta of the Spoon Licker, the Pot Licker, and the Bowl Licker.
Again, you.
Who just go around your kitchen licking everything. But they have their own specific tastes. Yeah, there's a bunch of other ones, and it's just quite fun and elf-related. Not Scottish elf-related, but we have some Icelandic listeners, I'm pretty sure. So that's something for you and your amazing Yule lads.
It was great fun learning about them when we were there.
Yep.
I enjoyed it a lot. I just love Iceland. I want to go back more than pretty much anything.
I know.
We were talking about it the other night that Iceland is the only other country in the world I think I would live in.
And that's fair.
I don't have any plans to do this, but thinking about it, it's the only other place I would live. And I would absolutely love to be able to go there more often.
And that's fair.
Because it might be my favourite place in the whole world.
It's pretty damn cool.
That isn't home with everyone that you love, you know.
You know, let's take that. Put that to one side. What have you brought?
I brought brownies.
Yay! We didn't have any.
I brought a tub of brownies.
I'm up for brownies.
And by I brought them, I mean you bought them. They were in the cupboard and I remembered. So I took them to the office.
Now, these are the chocolate brownie variety. We haven't just captured a household brownie in a cage.
These are the tasty kind.
The dog's very interested. Ailey is failing to get the tub open.
The dog's interested, but these are little death cakes for him, so he's not getting any. Do not feed brownies to your dog.
And we're not just going to have an extended sequence of us eating, don't worry.
No, I just thought you might like to be part of the process. See, now it feels like you're here. Brownie?
I would love a brownie. Oh, they don't really... I was hoping they'd rustle.
No, they're brownies. You've had brownies before, right?
Not in a while, to be fair.
You know what brownies are. Yep, so, you know, here you go. Here's the tub. I'm offering one to you. Take your imaginary brownie, if you're listening. Good choice. Okay, I'll take mine. You don't get one, Odin. And let's have a brownie together.
Yay.
3, 2, 1, cheers.
Cheers. What a regular.
Oh. They're
Fudgy.
tasty.
Mm-hmm. And now we'll be doing the rest of the podcast with our mouths full.
They're really good. You keep this in. Sainsbury's brownies. Double chocolate brownie mini bites by Sainsbury's.
I hope that wasn't too graphic for you. Well, my second thing, the third thing we brought, I pre-prepared earlier.
I don't think I know what this is.
You do not. It is a surprise.
Surprise.
In my drawer.
Oh my god.
It's a horseshoe.
Why do you have that? Oh my god.
For protection, Ailey.
Where did you find that?
This is my very rusty, antique horseshoe that I got out the shed.
Oh my god.
Because I think we mentioned it ages ago that I thought there was one in there. Well, confirmed. So we didn't have anything to protect ourselves last time.
Genuinely had no idea Kieran had that. This is completely new information. The jump that I did when he dumped that was 100% real.
Because I had it under a piece of kitchen towel. That was very loud. You can have this. Should we check if the dog's a fairy? I'm going to touch him with the horseshoe. No, he's fine. He didn't burst into flames.
He's so interested, though. Oh my god. Now, I feel like we're going to have an argument here, because I can see the way you're holding that horseshoe.
Oh yeah, you said it should be like as a U instead of as an N.
Well, we always had it facing up the way, because it holds the luck in the horseshoe, and when it falls down, you lose all the luck.
Oh shit, I've just emptied it all over myself.
Why did that sound dirty? It shouldn't, but it did. So, but I know that some people have it the other way.
You'd have it as a C shape.
No.
Cover both tracks.
Oh my god, I can't believe that you have that.
Yep.
That's so thoughtful.
I brought it for our safety.
Aww.
It's a lot mankier than I hoped it would be.
It's pretty dirty. I don't really want you to put it down anywhere.
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit rusty through the rest of this episode, but...
You can go wash your hands before we start if you want.
Yes, I might just do that.
So you don't smell like old metal.
Oh, it's so heavy. There we go.
We'll have to take a photo.
Yes, we can put it on Instagram. Maybe TikTok.
And that's an old horseshoe.
It's a very old horseshoe.
There's a nail in it.
Yeah. There's still a nail in it. It's full of mud.
Wow.
It's been there a while. So there you go. That's what I brought.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we'll play some music. I'll wash my hands. And you can tell us what we're here for today.
Yes. And thank you. That is actually really sweet.
question. How do horses in the wild get on? Because they won't have people putting horseshoes on them.
But I guess they won't do the same work.
Oh, that makes sense. They'll be able to take care of them themselves somehow.
I assume they're not on like roads and doing as much pulling around and being ridden on.
Yeah.
Let's look it up. Okay, do you want to hear the answer?
Yes.
From the RSPCA. A domestic horse is unable to wear their hooves down as nature intended. Wild horses maintain their own hooves by moving many kilometres a day across a variety of surfaces. So it's kind of like the dog's claws.
I was thinking that.
If he's only on grass, then they don't wear down the way they're supposed to.
Gotcha.
This keeps their hooves in good condition as the movement across abrasive surfaces wears the hooves on a continual basis.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's how they do it.
Very nice.
That's why they don't need them.
Well, what do we have today? I think I remember. But would you like to tell us?
I would. Today, we are talking about two of the biggest names in Scottish fairy lore.
Interesting.
It's the celebrity
Ooh.
edition. Celebrity episode.
They're the magazine cover couple.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about the Queen of Elphame and Nicnevin.
I've heard of 1 out of 2.
Mm-hmm,
That's not bad.
You have.
Nick, what?
Nicnevin.
Mcnevin. Is he a chef? Celebrity chef?
No.
Oh.
No.
No? Well, had to take a shot.
Yeah, I hope that this kind of mishmash episode style is working. Because ordinarily I wouldn't do this for main season stuff, but it seems to fit with these fairy legends. Because they're all linked together and they all have similarities. And there's so many of them that if I don't include like a couple per episode, we wouldn't cover any, really.
It's working for me. I'm enjoying myself.
So yeah, I have in my notes here that if you're an expert in this field and folklore and all of this good stuff we're chatting about, I'm really sorry. Because the way that I'm doing these episodes is probably making you cringe, and I can only apologise. I'm just doing the best with what I have.
Well, if you're here and you're cringing and complaining, you can get fuck and listen to something else.
No! That's the opposite of what I just said.
I know. Insult my wife.
Well, we're going to start with the legendary Fairy Queen of Elphame.
Ooh.
And we've talked about her here on the podcast before. This is not the first time we've talked about the Queen of Elphame.
In detail or in passing? Because I remember we've mentioned her in the last couple of episodes.
Well, aside from that,
okay,
is what I mean. We haven't talked about her in much detail before, but she has been mentioned. Mm-hmm. Now, I also have a full-length story from one of my books.
Yay! Story time.
Well, that answers my next question, because I was going to ask how you'd feel if I read it.
Positively.
Okay, that will come later. Just a little teaser for what's to come.
A hook to get you to listen to the end.
Now, if you cast your mind back to our last mini-series, you'll remember, maybe, that we talked about Isabel Gowdy.
Yes, others will remember, if I do not.
Thank God. She was the subject of one of the episodes on witchcraft in Scotland that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And her story was really unusual compared to other confessions. Obviously, I don't mean confessions. Confessions that were given by other people accused of witchcraft, because hers were really long and really detailed.
Yes. Barmy, if you will.
Yeah, really strange. She went into a lot of detail about everything that she had been up to. Mm-hmm. And her case was also strange because she just disappeared once her confession had been made. No one knows for sure what really happened to her, because there's no records of her execution, as you would expect, because she was found guilty of witchcraft. So there's no evidence that she was actually executed. She just vanishes.
Bizarre.
But in her confession, Isabel talked about meeting the Queen of Elphame.
Oh.
And feasting with her in her home in Fairyland, which we talked about before.
Yep, ringing a bell.
And this was one of the things held against her in her trial.
Oh.
That she had been consulting and being with the Queen of Elphame.
Interesting. I'm still on fairy godmother, you know? It's the Queen of Fairyland, she sounds lovely. She's not going to be lovely, is she?
Well, hopefully this can start breaking down that stereotype in your head.
Yep.
Since we are now directly talking about the Queen of Elphame.
Do you think the fairies get upset that I'm stereotyping them?
I mean, probably. It sounds like they get upset about a lot.
So they're only upset that I exist.
So,
well, hope that doesn't come up in my trial.
now, I didn't put this together when I was doing the research for our Isabel Gowdy episode. But the name Queen of Elphame, Elphame is spelled Elphame.
Oh, I see.
But it seems to come from like the way a Scottish person would say elf home.
Of course, yeah.
I didn't put the two together, and I saw lots of different articles and documents referring to Elphame and Elphame.
Oh.
Meaning Fairyland.
Yeah.
The Queen of Elphame.
That's bizarre. That's blown my mind.
So I'm sure a lot of people will, be like, duh.
Yeah.
Come on, Ailey, sort it out. But I didn't put it together.
No. Well, I think it's because we don't talk Scots, generally.
Not as much, no. Not as much as people further south.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right?
That has blown my mind. Because I thought it was like ELF, maybe EIM, like a Norse thing, because it sounds very like Asgard and Elfheim.
Yeah, Elfheim. Alfheim? I think that might be one of them.
There's something Heim is one of the...
Well, they all end in Heim.
World.
Apart from Midgard.
Oh yeah, like Jotunheim. Well, yeah, I thought it was that.
And Asgard, I suppose, but...
Elfheim. I thought that's where the spelling was going to come from.
But I think this might be where the name comes from. It's one theory, anyway.
Yeah, interesting. I like that.
But like most legends and stories about fairies we've talked about, it's not really clear where or when the myth of the Fairy Queen started, or where it came from. No one's really sure. She's supposedly very young and incredibly beautiful.
Aren't they all?
As you would expect, since she's literally the Fairy Queen.
Fair.
So, thinking about your fairy godmother.
Yep.
And when I was looking at the descriptions of her, they seem to vary quite widely. And it's pretty representative of how a patriarchal system views women.
Oh no.
Because she's described and depicted both as being like virginal and angelic and completely demonic.
Nice.
She's been described both ways. She's attractive, but she'll eat you alive.
No comment.
One article said that she could steal the heart of any man.
Oh no.
So maybe I'll lose you to the Fairy Queen.
Ooh, no, I've got my horseshoe. Safe. She's not coming in here.
I wrote this before you had a horseshoe.
Yep. I'm safe. Never putting that sucker down.
You've thwarted them.
Gonna hang it on a chain around my neck. Gonna get lots of bruises.
Well, in that case, you may be in luck, because apparently she already has a husband who is another fairy referred to as Christenday.
Interesting.
Or Christenday.
I was just wondering, maybe she steals hearts more literally, like, knife.
Snatches them out of your chest.
Rips open your rib cage, kind of stealing your heart.
Maybe.
If she's demonic and angelic. Just depends what mood the patriarchy's in.
Kinda, yeah. And how pretty you are. In poems that have been written about her, the Queen is wearing a skirt that's grass green, which makes sense. We talked about that last time, that green is the colour of the fairies.
Yes. Oh yeah, because they get mad when we wear it.
I'm not wearing green today.
Nope.
I'm in grey and black, because it's very dreary outside. So, grass green skirt.
Yep.
She's also described as wearing a velvet mantle. A mantle is just a type of cloak.
Okay, yep.
But, having it made of velvet. She's very well dressed, very grand looking. And in classic Fairy Queen fashion, she rides a bright white horse.
Very nice.
Now, if you're a horse person, I'm sure you're ready to tell me that no horse is completely, truly white. They don't exist.
Oh.
This one is bright white.
Interesting.
Because it's a fairy horse.
Oh, are they like grey, technically.
Yeah, I'm sure I remember that being a thing. You know, when you meet kids in primary school who are very into horses. I remember this happening. And I remember being told that you don't get white horses.
Interesting.
I'm going to look it up.
Death rides a white horse in Terry Pratchett's Discworld, and he's called Binky, and he's amazing. Because skeletal horses were impractical. They tended to fall apart on entry.
Okay, true white horses are really rare. Most horses that are commonly referred to as white are actually grey, whose hair coats are completely white.
I can definitely imagine that coming up in primary school.
Yeah, I remember it pretty vividly. I remember it happening.
The hand shooting up to correct the teacher about like a white horse.
Well, actually, it was when a bunch of us were all playing.
Oh, yeah.
And you're making things up. So you say, I've got a black horse, I've got a white horse, and then...
Actually, you don't get white horses, they're all grey.
Yeah.
Well, my imaginary horse is white, okay?
But this horse is even more magical than most because it has little bells tied into its mane.
Very cool.
Which, it's just the epitome of like fairydom in my head. This beautiful white horse with the flowing mane, bells tinkling in the wind.
Going jingle, 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 jingle.
Kind of. You have the gist.
Yeah.
You have the gist. I ended up on a lot of websites in my research, and I read a lot of articles about how to go about practicing witchcraft and using spells and invoking the Queen of Elphame to help you.
Oh.
That seems to be a pretty common thing I saw a lot of, and it isn't where I thought I'd end up.
No.
When I was doing my research for this, but there were loads of them.
I wouldn't have thought the Queen of Elphame would give a fuck about you and your spell.
Well, that seemed to be in them all, but it was giving you instructions on like how to do it. Anyway, so I'd be curious to hear someone who knows more than I do.
Yeah.
Because I was reading them as an observer for information.
Yes, as an outsider rather than a practitioner.
Yeah. But not where I thought I'd ended up with this episode.
No, that's surprising.
I also found out in my research that the Queen of Elphame is traditionally associated with death, destruction, plague, and battle.
Yeah, that's also surprising.
And she's intricately linked with something called the Other World, which in Celtic legends and Celtic tradition is like the underworld that you would think of in Greek and Roman mythology.
Okay.
But they refer to it as the Other World.
Well, she's busy, this queen.
Very. She has an awful lot going on. And it's quite bleak, really.
Yeah. It's a busy schedule of horribleness.
Not what you'd expect from someone described as beautiful as she is.
No, I'm not sure what I would have thought her duties were, so to speak. Just ruling over Fairyland, I guess.
But I think this juxtaposition between how beautiful she is and all of the things she's associated with, it kind of proves why people were afraid of fairies and didn't trust them. Because you have this shiny exterior, but she's incredibly powerful and might kill you.
The monster lies within.
Precisely. But in other articles I read, she's associated mostly with magic, childbirth, and healing.
Okay.
Which is the polar opposite of the list I just gave you a minute ago.
Yes, very much so.
So this has been a difficult episode to put together. Because she's a little bit of everything.
How do you... I mean, childbirth sounds a bit like going into battle, to be fair.
Yes. Maybe even harder.
Yep. Because I was going to say, how do you link those two? But maybe that's the link. Pain.
Saying pain goes on for far longer than you would want is almost always caused by a man. There are some connections now that I'm putting them together.
It's becoming clearer.
In some of the legends about the Queen of Elphame, she visits our world, the mortal world, in May as the May Queen. Which, if you consider the beautiful descriptions of her, it makes sense she'd be associated with spring, that it all comes together and lots of flowers and bright colours and everything coming into bloom.
That's a kind of more standard kind of trope, I think, in character. The sort of the beautiful woman who brings in spring.
Yeah. Again, it's in Terry Pratchett.
And Tolkien wrote about it in Beren and Luthien, one of the non-Middle-earth stories.
Now, I mentioned I have a story to tell you. The Queen of Elphame has been written about a lot. So she's actually more, from what I could see, she's more of a literary figure than a mythological one, because she's been written in so many poems and ballads and stories that when you look up the Queen of Elphame, there's lots of stories where she's a character.
Well, that's interesting.
Lots of things written about her, rather than just the like orally told legends.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. You know, like the Gilly Doo and the Brownies.
Yes. Yeah, she seems more pinned down, you know, into like people have made specific details about her.
More romanticised as well.
Yeah.
From what I saw.
Compared to the Brownies, who might be reinterpreted into stories. Like somebody commented somewhere that The Borrowers, the film and the book, they might have been Brownies.
Yeah. I could totally see that.
Yeah, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Whereas they've been reimagined, potentially. But the Queen of Elphame is always the Queen of Elphame. It's not her inspiration that gets reused.
Yeah, she's more of a solid figure.
Yeah.
I found a really interesting person in my research about the Queen, and he was a man called Thomas the Rhymer. Now, he was a laird from the Borders. Seems to have been a real person. A laird from the Borders, but he became well known for his gift of prophecy.
Oh.
He supposedly had the second sight, which we talked a lot about in our Bran Seer episode.
We did.
And as well as this, he wrote poetry.
Very nice, very nice.
A man of many talents.
Yep.
And he was born in 1220.
Okay.
So this is a long time ago. Long time ago. And in similar fashion to the Bran Seer, Thomas made a few prophecies that people think actually happened. Now, I know they're not strictly fairy related, but would you like to hear them?
Absolutely, I would.
Okay, here's the first one. On the morrow, a forenoon, shall blow the greatest wind that ever was heard before in Scotland.
Oh.
Now, some people believe that Thomas, in this prophecy, predicted the death of King Alexander III of Scotland, who died in 1286.
Okay.
Now, Thomas was with a man called the Earl of Dunbar, who... The Earl of Dunbar is the title that Agnes married into in our story about her defending her keep.
Yes.
It was Dunbar Castle she was defending.
Yep.
But this isn't the same person, it's just the title.
Yes.
Thomas was with the Earl of Dunbar of his time when he gave this prophecy. The Earl waited. He listened to what Thomas had said. He watched the sky, but there was no storm coming. And the weather didn't turn. Nothing happened. And the Earl was pissed because he thought he'd been lied to. So he issued an order for Thomas to be punished for lying to him. But Thomas argued that no, it just hasn't happened yet. The hour hasn't come. The storm is still coming.
Interesting.
It hasn't happened yet.
I like it.
The Earl decided to give him a chance, because if this is someone who can see the future, don't really think you want to piss them off. And it was later that evening that the Earl of Dunbar received news that the king had died.
That you could call that great wind. Interesting. I like it.
The greatest wind that ever was heard before in Scotland.
Spooky.
So that's one. I have another one.
Please share.
Who shall rule the Isle of Britain from the north to the South Sea? A French wife shall bear the sun, shall rule all Britain to the sea. That of the Bruce's blood shall come as near as the 9th degree.
James the 1st and 6th?
Yes. But I'll explain.
Yeah.
This prophecy was released to the public in 1603.
That's so strange, but okay.
So it was in a book, and the book was called The Whole Prophecy. So it was a book that had his prophecies in it. So no one else had heard this until the 1600s, supposedly. And this was after Queen Elizabeth I died, to give you some context for where we are. Now, some people think, as you just predicted... Some people think that this prophecy foresaw how eventually a Scottish king would rule over all of Britain, which happened when King James VI of Scotland became King James I of England.
I mean, he's not wrong. That's how these things get weight. He's not wrong.
So they're just a couple. That's Thomas the Rhymer.
I like it. I wonder if, because if you like give an argument that rhymes, it generally like lands better.
But it's more memorable.
Yeah. Like if you could come up with these prophecies as little rhymes, like they sound more compelling. So I wonder if that helped give weight to his predictions.
I would assume so, because if it's more entertaining, it sucks you in more.
Yeah.
So I would argue that people would remember it and they would make things fit.
Yeah. And even if you weren't like super into the validity of the prophecies, you could just enjoy the rhyme.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that was nice. Yeah, we'll keep this guy around. Like, that's fine.
Enjoy the fun of the thing.
He gives funny little like rhyming proverbs. Not proverbs, predictions. I'd keep that guy around.
Yeah. So that's Thomas the Rhymer.
Very nice.
He was a real person, but he's also a character in a ballad called Thomas Rhymer.
Okay.
Which details how he claimed he was whisked away to Fairyland. Which is the story I want to tell you.
Oh.
Because I have that story.
Ooh. Are we doing it just now or are we doing it later?
Well, I mean, we could do it now.
We could do it now. How does everyone feel? We're half an hour in. Do you want a story?
Tell us audibly out loud right now if you want to hear the story.
I'd love to hear a story. Yes, please tell us. Tell it, Haley. Does everyone else hear that? Is that a scary story? Do I need my horseshoe?
No, I wouldn't. I don't think it's that scary.
I've got it on hand just in case. I could throw it at intruders.
If that gets included, that was my watch, and that was Odin getting a fright and headbutting my chair.
Ah, that's why it was so loud. We didn't just drop the horseshoe again.
I am going to be reading it from a book I have. It's called Scottish Folk Tales, and it's published by Lomond Books. And it's I don't want to say compilation because that doesn't sound, an anthology of Scottish folk tales. But there's no one author, kind of like the other one I read from.
Yes.
So I don't want to not give credit. It's just there's not an author credited.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to get myself settled here for story time.
I'll try and remember to post photos of these
Yes.
at some point.
Make a note.
But if you find the book, Thomas the Rhymer is the first story. So it's nice and easy.
Nice and easy to...
So get comfortable, because this is a bit longer than the other one. Okay, get comfortable.
I'm ready.
Of all the young gallants in Scotland in the 13th century, there were none more gracious and debonair than Thomas Learmont, lair of the castle of Ercildoune in Berwickshire. This is Thomas. He loved books, poetry and music, which were uncommon tastes in those days, and above all he loved to study nature and to watch the habits of the beasts and birds that made their abode in the fields and woods round about his home. Now it chanced that one sunny May morning Thomas left his tower of Ercildoune and went wandering into the woods that lay about the Huntly Burn, a little stream that came rushing down from the slopes of the Eildon Hills. It was a lovely morning, fresh and bright and warm, and everything was so beautiful that it looked as paradise might look. The tender leaves were bursting out of their sheaths and covering all the trees with a fresh soft mantle of green, and amongst the carpet of moss under the young man's feet, yellow primroses and starry anemones were turning up their faces to the morning sky. The little birds were singing like to burst their throats, and hundreds of insects were flying backwards and forwards in the sunshine, while down by the burn side the bright-eyed water rats were poking their noses out of their holes, as if they knew that summer had come and wanted to have a share in all that was going on. Thomas felt so happy with the gladness of it all that he threw himself down at the root of a tree to watch the living things around him. As he was lying there, he heard the trampling of a horse's hooves as it forced its way through the bushes, and, looking up, he saw the most beautiful lady that he had ever seen coming riding towards him on a grey palfrey. She wore a hunting dress of glistening silk, the colour of fresh spring grass, and from her shoulders hung a velvet mantle which matched the riding skirt exactly. Her yellow hair, like rippling gold, hung loosely round her shoulders, and on her head sparkled a diadem of precious stones, which flashed like fire in the sunlight. Her saddle was of pure ivory, and her saddle-cloth of blood-red satin, while her saddle girths were of corded silk, and her stirrups of cut crystal.
Badass.
Right. Crystal stirrups. Her horse's reins were of beaten gold, all hung with little silver bells, so that as she rode along, she made a sound like fairy music. Apparently she was bent on the chase, for she carried a hunting horn and a sheaf of arrows, and she led 7 greyhounds along in a leash, while as many scenting hounds ran loose at her horse's side. As she rode down the glen, she lilted a bit of an old Scotch song, and she carried herself with such a queenly air, and her dress was so magnificent, that Thomas was like to kneel by the side of the path and worship her, for he thought that it must be the Blessed Virgin herself. But when the rider came to where he was, and understood his thoughts, she shook her head sadly. "I am not that blessed lady as thou thinkest," she said. "Men call me queen, but it is of a far other country, for I am the queen of Fairyland, and not the queen of heaven." And certainly it seemed as if what she said were true, for from that moment it was as if a spell were cast over Thomas, making him forget prudence and caution and common sense itself. For he knew that it was dangerous for mortals to meddle with fairies. Yet he was so entranced with the lady's beauty that he begged her to give him a kiss. This was just what she wanted, for she knew that if she once kissed him, she had him in her power. And, to the young man's horror, as soon as their lips had met, an awful change came over her. For her beautiful mantle and riding skirt of silk seemed to fade away, leaving her clad in a long grey garment. Which was just the colour of ashes. Her beauty seemed to fade away also, and she grew old and wan, and worst of all, half of her abundant yellow hair went grey before his very eyes. She saw the poor man's astonishment and terror, and she burst into a mocking laugh. "I'm not so fair to look on now as I was at first," she said, "but that matters little, for thou hast sold thyself, Thomas, to be my servant for 7 long years. For whoso kisseth the fairy queen must e'en go with her to Fairyland, and serve her there till that time is past." When he heard these words, poor Thomas fell on his knees and begged for mercy. But mercy he could not obtain. The elfin queen only laughed in his face, and brought her dapple grey palfrey close up to where he was standing. "No, no," she said, in answer to his entreaties. "Thou didst ask the kiss, and now thou must pay the price. So dally no longer, but mount behind me, for it is full time that I was gone." So Thomas, with many a sigh and groan of terror, mounted behind her, and as soon as he had done so, she shook her bridle rein, and the grey steed galloped off. On and on they went, going swifter than the wind, till they left the land of the living behind, and came to the edge of a great desert, which stretched before them dry and bare, and desolate to the edge of the far horizon. At least, so it seemed to the weary eyes of Thomas, and he wondered if he and his strange companion had to cross this desert, and, if so, if there were any chance of reaching the other side of it alive. But the fairy queen suddenly tightened her rein, and the grey palfrey stood short in its wild career. "Now must thou descend to earth, Thomas," said the lady, glancing over her shoulder at her unhappy captive, "and lout down and lay thy head on my knee, and I will show thee hidden things which cannot be seen by mortal eyes." So Thomas dismounted and louted down, and rested his head on the fairy queen's knee, and as he looked once more over the desert, everything seemed changed. For he saw 3 roads leading across it now, which he had not noticed before, and each of the 3 roads was different. One of them was broad and level and even, and it ran straight on across the sand, so that no one who was travelling by it could possibly lose his way. And the second road was as different from the first as it well could be. It was narrow and winding and long, and there was a thorn hedge on one side of it and a briar hedge on the other. And those hedges grew so high and their branches were so wild and tangled that those who were travelling along that road would have some difficulty in persevering on their journey at all. And the third road was unlike any of the others. It was a bonny road, winding up a hillside among brackens and heather and golden yellow winds, and it looked as if it would be pleasant travelling to pass that way. "Now," said the fairy queen, "an thou wilt, I shall tell thee where these 3 roads lead to. The first road, as thou seest, is broad and even and easy, and there be many that choose it to travel on. but though it be a good road, it leadeth to a bad end, and the folk that choose it repent their choice forever. And as for the narrow road, all hampered and hindered by the thorns and the briars, there be few that be troubled to ask where that leadeth to. But did they ask, perchance more of them might be stirred up to set out along it. For that is the road of righteousness. And although it be hard and irksome, yet it endeth in a glorious city, which is called the city of the great king. And the third road, the bonny road, that runs up the brae among the ferns, and leadeth no mortal kens whither. But I ken where it leadeth, Thomas, for it leadeth unto fair Elfland, and that road take we. And mark ye, Thomas, if ever thou hopest to see thine own tower of Ercildoune again, take care of thy tongue when we reach our journey's end, and speak no single word to any one save me. For the mortal who openeth his lips rashly in Fairyland must bide there forever. Then she bade him mount her palfrey again, and they rode on. The ferny road was not so bonny all the way as it had been at first, however, for they had not ridden along it very far before it led them into a narrow ravine, which seemed to go right down under the earth, where there was no ray of light to guide them, and where the air was dank and heavy. There was a sound of rushing water everywhere, and at last the grey palfrey plunged right into it, and it crept up, cold and chill, first over Thomas's feet, and then over his knees. His courage had been slowly ebbing ever since he had been parted from the daylight, but now he gave himself up for lost, for it seemed to him certain that his strange companion and he would never come safe to their journey's end. He fell forward in a kind of swoon, and if it had not been that he had a tight hold of the fairy's ash-grey gown, I warrant he had fallen from his seat and had been drowned. But all things, be they good or bad, pass in time, and at last the darkness began to lighten, and the light grew stronger, until they were back in broad sunshine. Then Thomas took courage and looked up, and they were riding through a beautiful orchard where apples and pears, dates and figs and wineberries grew in great abundance. And his tongue was so parched and dry, and he felt so faint, that he longed for some of the fruit to restore him. He stretched out his hand to pluck some of it, but his companion turned in her saddle and forbade him. "There is nothing safe for thee to eat here," she said, "save an apple, which I will give thee presently. If thou touch aught else, thou art bound to remain in Fairyland forever." So poor Thomas had to restrain himself as best as he could, and they rode on slowly until they came to a tiny tree all covered with red apples. The Fairy Queen bent down and plucked one and handed it to her companion. "This I can give thee," she said, "and I do it gladly, for these apples are the apples of truth, and whoso eateth them gaineth this reward, that his lips will never more be able to frame a lie." Thomas took the apple and ate it, and forevermore the grace of truth rested on his lips, and that is why, in after years, men called him True Thomas. They had only a little way to go after this before they came in sight of a magnificent castle standing on a hillside. "Yonder is my abode," said the Queen, pointing to it proudly. "There dwelleth my lord and all the nobles of his court, and as my lord hath an uncertain temper, and shows no liking for any strange gallant whom he sees in my company, I pray thee, both for thy sake and mine, to utter no word to any one who speaketh to thee, and if anyone should ask me who and what thou art, I will tell them thou art dumb, so wilt thou pass unnoticed in the crowd." With these words the lady raised her hunting horn and blew a loud, piercing blast, and as she did so, a marvellous change came over her again, for her ugly ash-covered gown dropped off her, and the grey in her hair vanished, and she appeared once more in her green riding skirt and mantle, and her face grew young and fair. And a wonderful change passed over Thomas also, for as he chanced to glance downwards, he found that his rough country clothes had been transformed into a suit of fine brown cloth, and that on his feet he wore satin shoes. Immediately the sound of the horn rang out, the doors of the castle flew open, and the king hurried out to meet the queen, accompanied by such a number of knights and ladies, minstrels and page boys, that Thomas, who had slid from his palfrey, had no difficulty in obeying her wishes and passing into the castle unnoticed. Everyone seemed very glad to see the queen back again, and they crowded into the great hall in her train, and she spoke to them all graciously and allowed them to kiss her hand. Then she passed, with her husband, to a dais at the far end of the huge apartment, where 2 thrones stood on which the royal pair seated themselves to watch the revels which now began. Poor Thomas, meanwhile, stood far away at the other end of the great hall, feeling very lonely, yet fascinated by the extraordinary scene on which he was gazing. For although all the fine ladies and courtiers and knights were dancing in one part of the great hall, there were huntsmen coming and going in the other part, carrying in great antlered deer, which apparently they had killed in the chase, and throwing them down in heaps on the floor. And there were rows of cooks standing beside the dead animals, cutting them up into joints and bearing away the joints to be cooked. Although, altogether, it was such a strange, fantastic scene that Thomas took no heed of how the time flew, but stood and gazed, never speaking a word to anybody. This went on for 3 long days. Then the Queen rose from her throne and, stepping from the dais, crossed the hall to where he was standing. "'Tis time to mount and ride, Thomas," she said, "if thou wouldst ever see the fair castle of Ercildoune again." Thomas looked at her in amazement. "Thou spokest of 7 long years, lady," he exclaimed, "and I have been here but 3 days." The Queen smiled. "Time passeth quickly in Fairyland, my friend," she replied. "Thou thinkest that thou hast been here for but 3 days. 'Tis 7 years since we two met, and now it's time for thee to go. I would fain have had thy presence with me longer, but I dare not, for thine own sake. For every 7th year an evil spirit cometh from the regions of darkness, and carrieth back with him one of our followers, whomsoever he chanceth to choose. And as thou art a goodly fellow, I fear that he might choose thee. So as I would loathe to let harm befall thee, I will take thee back to thine own country this very night." Once more the grey palfrey was brought, and Thomas and the Queen mounted it. And as they had come, so they returned to the Eildon tree near the Huntly burn. Then the Queen bade Thomas farewell, and as a parting gift he asked her to give him something that would let people know that he had really been to Fairyland. "I have already given thee the gift of truth," she replied. "I will now give thee the gifts of prophecy and poetry, so that thou wilt be able to foretell the future, and also to write wondrous verses. And besides these unseen gifts, here is something that mortals can see with their own eyes, a harp that was fashioned in Fairyland. Fare thee well, my friend. Some day, perchance, I will return for thee again." With these words the lady vanished, and Thomas was left alone, feeling a little sorry, if truth be told, at parting with such a radiant being and coming back to the ordinary haunts of men. 14 long years went by, and people were beginning to forget that Thomas the Rhymer had ever been in Fairyland. But at last a day came when Scotland was at war with England, and the Scottish army was resting by the banks of the Tweed, not far from the Tower of Ercildoune. And the master of the tower determined to make a feast and invite all the nobles and barons who were leading the army to sup with him. That feast was long remembered, for the Laird of Ercildoune took care that everything was as magnificent as it could possibly be. And when the meal was ended, he rose in his place, and taking his elfin harp, he sang to his assembled guests song after song of the days of long ago. The guests listened breathlessly, for they felt that they would never hear such wonderful music again. And so it fell out. For that very night, after all the nobles had gone back to their tents, a soldier on guard saw, in the moonlight, a snow-white hart and hind moving slowly down the road that ran past the camp. There was something so unusual about the animals that he called to his officer to come and look at them. And the officer called to his brother officers, and soon there was quite a crowd, softly following the dumb creatures who paced solemnly on, as if they were keeping time to music unheard by mortal ears. "There's something uncanny about this," said one soldier at last. "Let us send for Thomas, perchance he may be able to tell us if it be an omen or no." "Aye, send for Thomas," cried everyone at once. So a little page was sent in haste to the old tower to rouse the Rhymer from his slumbers. When he heard the boy's message, the seer's face grew grave and rapt. "'Tis a summons," he said softly, "a summons from the Queen of Fairyland. I've waited long for it, and it hath come at last." And when he went out, instead of joining the little company of waiting men, he walked straight up to the snow-white hart and hind. As soon as he reached them, they paused for a moment as if to greet him. Then all three moved slowly down a steep bank that sloped to the little river Leader, and disappeared in its foaming waters, for the stream was in full flood. And although a careful search was made, no trace of Thomas of Ercildoune was found. And to this day, the country folk believe that the hart and the hind were messengers from the elfin queen, and that he went back to Fairyland with them.
I thoroughly enjoyed that.
My throat was so sore.
I hope you all enjoyed that.
So, that was long. I hope you don't mind.
I mean, I didn't mind.
You said, you've probably edited it out, but you said you had lots of questions.
I did, yes. I have thoughts, feelings.
Share them with the group, Kieran.
Musings.
It's a book club now.
I was about to say, with the book club. It's interesting. What was all interesting? That it seemed like the Queen had captured him, but then she feared for his safety. Mm-hmm. That I wasn't expecting. That because I knew the time passed differently. So that 7 years had gone by.
That's quite a common thing in stories about fairies, I think.
Yeah.
If you end up in Fairyland, time doesn't pass the same there as it does here. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that popped up when I was researching the changelings, actually.
Oh, yes.
That they were gone, but they had no idea how much time was passing.
I think we mentioned it.
Possibly. Continue.
Yeah, but then she's like, oh no, like this evil spirit will come and take somebody, so we have to get you out of here. I'm like, well, why do you care? But I was like, well, actually, you were taking lots of care to make sure he didn't eat anything and he didn't speak to anyone. And
Well,
that he
remember,
was safe.
this was payment because he wanted to kiss her.
Oh.
She didn't just take him.
Yeah.
She told him that it will cost you, basically.
Pay the piper. Mm-hmm. I also like the bit about the 3 roads.
I really like that. I like that part of the tale. In other versions, the road to heaven is like completely covered in thorns and lilies.
Interesting.
That's the description.
Very metaphorical. I like it.
Right? There's a lot in it, that story in particular, where there seems to be a lot of religious overlap. And it's a very moral story.
Yes. There's lots of like parables within it almost.
Yeah.
And truths.
Because you have things like he's eating an apple from a tree in Fairyland. It's a lot like the forbidden fruit.
I always think that there's always an apple. Mm-hmm. It's always an apple. What's a hart and a hind?
They're deer.
I thought they were deer.
It's a male and female deer.
Oh, okay.
I wondered if you'd ask, but I didn't want to ruin the
flow.
The flow. Yeah, they're deer.
Well, I had like 2 animals in my head. I just wasn't sure which ones. And what was he sat on? A palfrey?
Palfrey? I think it's a type of horse.
Okay.
Just a horse.
Yeah. I had a horse in my head. I'm like, I wonder what specifically he's sitting on.
Now, I looked into it a bit more because I was interested in this evil spirit that appears.
I know. What's that about? What's that doing?
Well, this is a common trope when you read stories about Fairyland and the Queen and, well, fairies generally, that fairies have to pay this debt. And in this story, it's an evil spirit. Mm-hmm. In other stories, it's the devil himself. They have to pay a debt every 7 years, and they have to pay it with blood.
Crazy.
So in some stories, they steal humans to pay this tax. So that's why they take humans away. But in others, they have to give up one of their own to pay this tax.
That's mad.
So she was worried that Thomas would be taken away.
Yeah, because he's good of heart or something similar. That seems mad to me.
Right?
That's brand new. I've not heard that before. No. Not in that context, anyway.
And yeah, every 7 years. So that was another thing I came across when I was looking into the changelings, actually, because one of the parts of the story was that, they need to take the babies away.
Interesting.
To pay this toll. I don't even know the right word. It's just this tithe that they have to pay.
No wonder the brownies got the hell out of there, and they're happy just toiling away and deserving people's houses.
Making shoes? Hell yes.
I know.
Scaring cats? Yes, please.
Sniffing doors? Absolutely.
Did you like the story?
I did like the story. It was a very good story.
I hope it's not too long. If you've skipped it as you listen to this episode, that's okay.
That's okay.
I'll forgive you. Because it is long. But I wanted to include it.
But did you skip to the story? Are you here for the stories?
Let us know. Story or no? Yay or nay?
Yay or nay? Yay or nay?
So that's a version of the Thomas Rhymer ballad.
Yes.
Because the ballad was written in verse, obviously, and there's different versions of it. This is a somewhat paraphrased version.
I wonder if the original rhymed. I hope so.
I feel like it did. I've come across snippets of it. I haven't found the whole thing. But I thought this was better.
There once was a man from Tower Upton who him.
You're a poet.
I didn't even realise.
You're going to annoy a lot of people with that. Now, there's another ballad written about the Queen of Elphame.
Okay.
And in this, she's also whisking people away to Fairyland.
For smooches.
Not so much in this one.
Less smooches. I'm less interested.
But this one's called Tam Lin.
Okay.
Which is interesting because there's a famous book, or like a viral book series that's out just now called A Court of Thorn and Roses. And it's all fairies in that. All the characters are fairies. I haven't read them. But one of the characters in that is called Tamlin.
Interesting.
This ballad about fairies in Fairyland is called Tam Lin.
Oh, yep.
So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
In this ballad, Queen of Elphame steals Tam away, and his true love has to rescue him, or he'll never be allowed to come home.
Ooh, tricky.
It's romantic. It's a little bit dodgy. It's a bit dod. Definitely of its time. Because he is under a curse that requires him to take possession of a virgin.
Okay.
Which I don't like. Red flag.
Bit weird.
And then in the ballad, a woman walks past him in a forest and she becomes pregnant without her knowledge. Because she walks past this person.
Interesting.
Not cool. It's just the story.
Yep.
I don't agree with it. It is what it is.
Just reporting the fact.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I'm not recommending it as a brilliant piece of storytelling. In the ballad, he's worried because the tithe that the fairies have to pay is to hell, and they have to sacrifice one of their own.
Yep.
Rather than humans. And Tamlin is worried that he's going to be next. And the woman in the tale who becomes pregnant without knowing it by walking past a fairy is called Janet. I don't know why that's funny. It just is.
It's not very fairy-like, but then she's not a fairy,
No.
is she?
Old Janet. If you're a Janet.
Poor Janet.
This is about you.
Wrong place, the wrong time.
She manages to rescue Tamlin from being sacrificed. And the Queen of Elphame is furious about the whole thing. So you see this side of her that's very domineering and scary.
I imagine she's quick to fury.
Yes. Definitely in this ballad that's the case. But she accepts defeat because she knows when she's been beaten.
That's surprising.
And that's a very, very short version of the ballad because it's a lot longer in detail than that.
Being quick to fury, but also just like, you win. Seems very strange to have.
Well, I guess it's understanding the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And I think that this ballad was first released in the 1500s, but it's been rewritten and reworked a lot.
Well, I preferred the one you read out.
I thought it was a good story.
I liked it. Less mysterious pregnancy.
Yeah. Taking possession of it. What the fuck is that?
I know. It's just a bit weird, isn't it?
What is that about?
It's not good. It's not aged well.
So now we have like a bit of an understanding of the Queen of Elphame and Fairyland.
I forgot this is a twofer.
Oh, well, we're not quite finished with her yet, but I wanted to give you like an overview of what she's like as a character and the background. But one of the things I find the most interesting about the Queen of Elphame and what I want to talk about in relation to her is how often she comes up in the confessions of those accused of witchcraft.
Oh.
Now, I talked about this at the beginning.
Yep, Isabel Gowdy.
I wanted to talk more about it because she's not the only one.
Give me a minute. That's just not what I expected you to say.
Is it okay?
Totally fine. I just need to bring my head around to witchcraft now. She comes up consistently or frequently.
Well, several times, yeah.
That's strange.
And I just think it's an interesting phenomenon that the two are linked.
Yeah. So bizarre. So bizarre. I'd be really curious. You never know. That's almost the annoying thing, to know the full backgrounds of these people, but to talk to them and know their beliefs and what they were reading. That's what, if they could read, or what stories they were telling and listening to and stuff.
Well, in most cases, it seems likely that they would know stories about the fairies, and they would know that they had magic and they had power.
Yeah.
So when they're pushed to give a confession as to where their powers came from,
that would come to mind, wouldn't it? But I think it's easy to assume that, so I'd be curious.
It is, absolutely. I'm not saying that's the truth at all. Just, that makes logical sense.
Yeah. I'm always wary of when it just sounds like it could be true. But you never get to know the full picture. That's unusual, though. I wouldn't have expected that.
Well, no, that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I've tried to make each of these episodes a little bit different. And I've tried to relate the folklore to history where I can. And this is a great example of this, because I have a few documented people who cited the Queen of Elphame in their confessions. And obviously I'm saying confessions with big, big air quotes, because they were tortured, obviously.
Yes.
Horrendous. But I want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're game.
I'm fully game for that.
You're not confused anymore.
No, I'm on board. I'm with us. We're here. I feel like my voice sounds funny, but I'm leaning into it.
We're very tired.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to concentrate, and I have a script in front of me. I mean, no, I don't script anything. It's all completely off the cuff. Bessie Dunlop was from Ayr and was investigated for being a witch in 1576. And that's why I don't read exclusively from the script.
So where does that put us in the witch trials? 1576. Our witch trial series.
Well, give me a moment.
I'm trying to remember what dates we had. That's earlier, I think. On the earlier end.
Oh, give me a minute.
Well, I'm just trying to think and talk and be entertaining.
Give me a minute.
I'm not just going to let you look it up and then you see.
Okay, well, the North Berwick witch trials were in 1590. So this is prior. This is 1576.
1576.
With me?
Yes.
And we're looking at Bessie Dunlop.
Bessie Dunlop.
She was from Ayr. And her story, I'm going to say her story is a shame, but they all are. They're all, yeah. Oh, and the Witches of Scotland group are pushing through their petition to get their pardon. It looks like it's going to happen.
Good.
You should definitely listen to their podcast and look at what they're doing. Just going to say it now before I forget, because I'm very excited about everything that they've managed to do.
Absolutely.
If you agree that the witch trials were awful and horrendous and they should absolutely be pardoned since they did nothing wrong,
obviously,
definitely check them out, because they're doing great stuff over there.
Nice. Want the name again?
Witches of Scotland.
Very good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So yeah, like I was saying, all of the stories are a shame, but her story is a shame. Because by all accounts, she only ever did good with the knowledge that she had.
No.
She never meant anyone any harm. And she never made a lot of money from people. She just tried to help. She was a good healer. She was really skilled. It seems like she just had a comforting way with people, and she wanted to do good.
Such a shame.
Yeah.
As you've said.
Now, in her story, I think she talked about it before she was actually accused and put on trial. But she spoke about being guided and approached by the spirit of a man called Thomas Reid.
Oh, okay.
And she claimed that this was a man who had died in battle 20 years before. So she's speaking with a spirit. And she claimed that he had lived locally, he'd lived in the area before he died. And he was a figure who was known in the community, so people knew his name.
Okay.
Who were living.
Uh-huh.
And he just helped her to help others.
Huh.
He was her spirit guide.
It was nice of him.
But in her story, Thomas Reid was the one who liaised with the Queen of Elphame.
Oh, okay,
And she had ordered this spirit to help Bessie.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And Bessie talked about how she had a really difficult time. She had given birth to her child, but it had been a really difficult birth. Her child was sick. She was just in a mess. But Bessie remembered a night when a woman came to the door asking for a drink of water. Bessie gave it to her, and the woman was very grateful, went on her way.
Yes.
And suddenly, Bessie's life started improving, and she started speaking with the spirit called Thomas. And according to her story, the woman who came to the door was the Queen of Elphame in disguise, trying to prove her worthy of her help.
What? What? That's strange.
That was, according to her story. I know that a lot of this is like under coercion, so I'm always wary about saying this is what she believed, because maybe she didn't.
This is what she gave in her confession. Yes.
But it's also the story she gave people before.
That's unusual.
And Bessie claims to have interacted with and seen the fairies several times when she was dealing with Thomas. And she described being encouraged to abandon Christianity in favour of living a life with the fairies. And like they offered her everything she could dream of.
Those sneaky sons of bitches.
And she saw them riding in like horses in like a big pack. Kind of like the Wild Hunt that we talked about over on Patreon. She spoke about that a lot.
That's strange.
What's very cool and kind of spooky is that there's a network of caves near where Bessie lived called Cleves Cove.
Cleves Cove, very nice.
And locals believed that this was a home of the fairies. And lots of other stories that don't involve Bessie came from those caves because they believed the fairies lived there.
That would put them very much in her mind, wouldn't they? If she lived close to such a fairy hub.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for all the ways to get powers, that's a nice way.
That was what she said.
To get bestowed this extra magicalness upon you.
Unfortunately, her downfall came because she got too famous. She was known for helping people, but also for helping people find lost things, which included things people had stolen. So when she found those things and outed the thief, there was someone out to get her then. Because she had exposed them.
Well, that's not so good.
So she was accused of being a witch and she was executed.
No. It's always the same with witchcraft, isn't it?
It's always a bummer because it's always sad.
Sad.
Unfair.
I wondered if maybe she was called in to heal the Lord's wife and she didn't manage and he was really angry about it. So he just called her a witch and got her executed and stuff.
I mean, that probably happened at some point.
Probably happened elsewhere.
It's just not what happened in this case. So that was Bessie.
That's Bessie.
And that was what she said about the Queen of Elphame.
Well, that's nice. That's a nicer story of Queenie. Well, this Queenie can stay.
Yes, I've also realised that what we've just talked about is linked directly to the next person that I want to talk to you about.
Totally on purpose.
Yes. I had forgotten the link for a second, but it's there. Keep it in your head.
I don't know what it is, but yes.
That you thought Bessie might have tried to heal a Lord's lady and didn't manage. Keep that in there.
I've got it.
Now I'm going to tell you about Alison Pearson. Alison was born in 1533, but in 1588... so 12 years after Bessie, she was executed as a witch in Edinburgh, just like Bessie was. But Alison was from Fife.
Fife?
Yep, Alison Fife. Odin.
Yes.
Come on now.
This is why we don't record with you here. You're too distracting. With your beautiful face. You're stunning. Come here.
He's just looking at you. Dad, shut up.
Oh, Dad, obsessed with me.
Alison was a healer, and she was a healer in and around St Andrews. And she learnt her craft from the ghost of her uncle.
Okay.
Isn't it nice when a family can come together?
I know, right?
Even after death.
Yeah. I hope I'm this useful after I'm dead.
I know. It's a nice thought, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You could be a mentor.
Yeah.
Now, she claimed that he would carry out her tasks with her. He would follow her around as she did her healing. And she believed that his spirit had healed her when she was a child.
Okay.
And she also believed that his ghost associated with the fairies. Mm-hmm. Just like Bessie had.
Yeah.
Bold claims.
Very bold, very bold. I wonder if that's the connection between the dead and the fairies comes back to, you said she's also queen of like the other world.
Yeah, there are a lot of links there. Mm-hmm. A lot of stories that connect the fairies to ghosts.
Yeah.
Which is unusual to me.
I know, it doesn't seem right. It's brand new to me. I've never considered, that's my toes, I've never considered fairies and the dead to be connected in any way, shape or form.
But it seems like when you go back and look at Celtic tradition, the two are very much linked. Because they had their understanding of what the afterlife was.
Yeah. A fairly good grasp on it.
Fairly Odd Parents.
Always comes up.
Now, Alison was actually investigated earlier than 1588 when she was executed, because people had believed that she was a witch for quite a long time. In 1583, she was investigated by a man called Patrick Adamson, who was the Archbishop of St Andrews. Okay. No less. A big deal. Mm. But then, Adamson got sick. He got really sick. And Alison was the best healer for miles.
Yep, everyone hates the witches till you get really sick.
So in a move I can't fathom, because I don't have the audacity, Adamson had Alison released so she could heal him.
Oh.
Which she did.
Oh. Well, you'd have to, wouldn't you? Oh, no.
And after this, once he had recovered from whatever sickness he had, the men who worked with him claimed that she had used witchcraft to heal Adamson, since he shouldn't have gotten better, and they arrested her again.
No. Oh, God.
Can you believe these people?
What a bunch of cocks.
Now, in this case, the Archbishop intervened and he arranged for her release, because she had helped him.
Yes.
Because obviously.
Obviously.
But then a few years later, she was charged with concocting a brew to enchant the Archbishop, which was why he had shown her mercy. So she was imprisoned again.
Oh. It's just painful. Mm-hmm. So painful.
It's so bad.
Oh, I'm so raging.
So this is why I wanted you to bear in mind the, like, being called in to help the people in charge.
Yep.
And then just getting shat on.
Shat on for it.
But in this case, she did actually help him.
Oh. Raging. Mm-hmm. I wonder if after some of the more major witch hunts happened, the death rates increased because they'd gotten rid of all the healers.
I mean, there's a good chance.
Like, you have to assume, and...
Especially because it's inherited knowledge.
Yeah, actually, it probably rippled for years afterwards.
Well, I mean, you feel it in any profession. If people stop going... You know, like, if the pay for something gets really bad and no one does it for a while, you lose the skills, because if people don't learn it anymore... Oh, shut up. If people don't learn it anymore, they can't teach it anymore.
Yeah, and I imagine a lot of the healing was around, like, childbirth and things. Mm-hmm. I imagine that was a very major component. So you have to assume that got much worse over the next generation, but then multiple as well. Cut out your nose, spite your face, stand on your own toe, kick yourself in the crotch.
They don't care about that. They're doing God's work.
They're doing God's work. The faster you die, the faster you're with God, and that's good, probably.
So bleak. When she was interrogated, Alison started talking about her interactions with the Queen of Elphame, which is why we're talking about her. Alison described being carried off to Fairyland, and she explained that although she and the Queen were close, she spent most of her time with the fairies that served the Queen in her court. And she talked about this at length. She explained that the Queen's servants, her fairies, would help her craft salves and medicines in the real world, and they would help her pick herbs and flowers. But she also said that these fairies would sometimes beat her.
Oh no.
Which would lead to her being, quote, bedridden for 20 weeks at a time.
20 weeks?
20 weeks.
That's a long time. Get a healer in if that's the case.
20 weeks? What the hell did they do?
I know. My life, it's 5 months. Damn. Your ass beat.
But that's Alison Pearson.
Well, another tragic tale. Lost to the Elf Queen.
And now I'm going to tell you about someone called Andrew Mann.
Your man, Andrew?
In case you couldn't tell, Andrew was a man. And in 1597, so we're later again, he was accused of being a witch in Aberdeen. He was a healer, he was a cunning man, which we've talked about before.
Yep.
But he was found guilty of practicing magic in 1598, and he was burned at the stake.
Nasty.
However, when he was making his confession, you know, totally willingly and totally not under duress, he claimed that he had received his powers from the Queen of Elphame herself. He said that she had given him his powers of healing, as well as being able to steal milk from cows. Which seems like an odd choice.
I know, of all the superpowers to get.
Well, it's one of those things. If it sounds that wild, maybe it's true. Because why would you make that up? Except in Andrew's case, we know why he would make that up. Because he's having his fingernails torn out.
Yep, he had to say something.
Presumably. Apparently, he was also able to see the future. That was another thing he said the Queen of Elphame had given him.
Useful.
But then he took it one step further than Bessie and Alison had done. Because Andrew claimed that he had been... Odin... It's like he's doing that just to make sure we know he's there.
Yeah, he's not even looking at us.
Andrew claimed that he had been in a romantic, sexual relationship with the Queen, and that they'd even had children together.
Nice.
God, you're such a man.
Yeah. Fist bump, bro.
I hate it here.
Surrounded by boys.
Andrew explained that he had met the Queen for the first time when he was only a child. And it was 28 years later, when they found each other again, that they slept together.
How romantic, probably.
I mean, get it? He also claimed that he had seen the Queen of Elphame ride as part of a company with her husband and the devil.
And he'd seen her naked.
With her husband and the devil. And in some stories about the Queen of Elphame, her husband is the devil.
Okay. That will fit with the new image we're getting of her.
But, you know, it varies across lots of different stories. So yeah, I wanted to give you this link and tell you a little bit about where she's popped up in history. Because I find it interesting, even if it's not strictly part of the folklore.
Yeah, I find it interesting. So I have this funny image of the devil coming home. He's like, "Oh, honey, what a day at work today," as he like hangs up his trident. And that's neither here nor there. It's just him coming home to the Queenie for his supper. Babe, I slept with Andrew Mann. No!
What could I do? He's a man.
He's the man.
But yes, unfortunately, he was executed as a witch.
Yes, you probably shouldn't laugh, except you have to laugh because it's all so sad.
My laptop wants to update.
Not the time.
How dare it?
Well, who's Mcnevin? That's what I want to know.
This is the part of the episode that we're at.
Who dis?
Precisely. Well, my reason for leading you down the rabbit hole of the link between the Queen of Elphame and witchcraft,
yes, is
so that I can perfectly set up for you the platform on which to tell you about Mcnevin.
Oh, thank goodness for that. If it was just
are you upset?
Totally unrelated, I would be very upset.
Are you not happy with how this is going?
Delighted.
Initially, I came across Mcnevin because a lot of articles and books use those two names interchangeably. So the Queen of Elphame and Nicnevin.
Interesting.
But it seems like they're two different figures from folklore. They don't seem like the same being.
They're being mislabeled.
So I'm going to treat them as separate. But if you don't see them that way, that's fine.
That's fine.
Because a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Mcnevin is considered the fairy queen of the Unseelie Court.
Oh. That makes sense.
Do you feel the satisfaction?
Oh, the wash of relief.
Were you concerned?
Not just because I upended my horseshoe over myself.
You see now why we're doing it this way?
Yes, and the Unseelie Court are the nasty ones, aren't they?
And in some legends, Nicnevin is the Scottish goddess of witchcraft.
Oh, it all comes together.
Kind of like the darker counterpart to the Queen of Elphame.
I thought it was going to be a male figure.
Nope.
A king of something.
Nope. Two ladies.
Two ladies.
Two badass ladies.
A couple of badass ladies just broing down. Jesus.
So I've shown you one side
Yes.
of this, presumably the Seelie Court, because the Queen of Elphame is not entirely good. She's more neutral.
Yes, but she was doing some good things.
But she's not going out of her way to help humans.
Yes.
She kind of does as she pleases, as it suits her.
Yes.
Which is what we talked about.
But she got a nice glass of water when she needed one, and she was like, sweet, I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to get you a nice spirit to come and help you out with chores and such.
Nicnevin is not that.
She's just shitting on everybody.
She's described very differently to the Queen of Elphame. Accounts describe her as a large hag clad in grey who rides on the sky on stormy nights, accompanied by a congregation of nymphs and ghosts.
Fuck, that's cool.
Very different.
Very rude.
Much darker.
Yeah.
And again, sounds a lot like The Wild Hunt.
It does. I've been thinking that.
Which, if you would like to hear more about, we have talked about it already over on our Patreon.
Yes, that's an extra episode over there.
By all accounts, Nicnevin is extremely powerful.
I should have thought so.
As you would expect. She can transform land and sea. Literal land and sea.
Badass.
And she was the goddess of witchcraft, magic, ghosts. She's basically the goddess of spooky season. And I kind of want to dress as her at Halloween.
I know. Is she our new mascot? Is that what this
I
is?
kind of love her.
Yeah.
I'm scared of her, but I love her.
Kind of that way where you get like, you're in a goth phase when you're in school.
I never had a goth phase.
I didn't either. I got into the music a bit, but never the aesthetic.
Yeah, there was a lot of the music I liked, but I never did the goth thing.
Yeah, I was into the music, and that was just like badass and cool. I feel that's when you'd be into Nicnevin, or if you can do it now, and that's totally fine.
I'm into her. I think she's very cool, but
Yep.
I am very scared of her.
Yes,
And
just
yet-
like me and my wife.
Excuse me? Say that to my face. Say it when there's not two desks between us, boy.
Have to hide behind my horseshoe.
Like, that'll help you. Although I'm referring to her as a goddess, she has ties with Fairyland and fairies generally, because she's seen as the queen of the Unseelie Court.
Yes,
But it's one of those things where everything gets kind of muddled, and she's treated as a goddess because she has all this power.
I think that's fair.
Because she could manipulate and transform the natural world.
I mean, she's very goddess-like.
Well, it's goddess behaviour, but the fairies are part of the natural world.
Yes.
That's what they protect. So it's just a mixture. It's difficult to describe and categorise, I think.
If you will, she's very god-esque. Get it?
You want another brownie? I'm going to have one. It's going to soothe the pain.
Soothe the pain.
Listener, would you like one? I'll have one for you. Oh, I broke one. Sorry, you have to have the broken one. You want one?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Sure?
Yeah, I'm going to get some water.
They're really good.
No, I'm fine.
It's for the pain.
I'm going to bask in the glory of my own joke.
It's medicinal. It's my humour pack. I'm craving good jokes and I'm not getting any.
Oh, I've got such a craving for good humour and I just can't seem to find any around here. Anyway.
One of the things that made Mcnevin so powerful was that she could control the seasons.
That's very powerful.
Which, if you think about it, effectively puts her in charge of life and death. If she controls the seasons.
Yeah. Oh, your crop's just coming through in summer. Boom, it's winter now. That's something.
And we talked about that a lot last time or the time before.
Did we?
How human lives were subject to lots of things that were out of our control.
Yes.
Because you had the weather. You had to depend on your harvest. If you got sick and couldn't do the harvest, that was problems. And just luck.
Yeah.
And Mcnevin had a lot to do with all of those things. She was seen to be in control of all of that. So she was feared. So people would make offerings to Mcnevin to try and ensure that they had a good harvest later in the year.
You would do anything to try, wouldn't you? You'd have to.
And I think it's because of this and the reference to her being able to transform land and sea that Mcnevin is also confused with another figure from Scottish mythology called the Cailleach.
Yep.
Who is the goddess of winter, as well as other things. And calling someone a Cailleach also, it's just an old woman.
I was saying, didn't your grandpa used to call your granny that?
Yeah, and she called him Bottock.
Yeah.
Which is old man. But that's another figure. I don't want to get too confusing, so we're not talking about her this episode. Otherwise we'll just keep linking and it'll never stop.
It never ends.
It'll just be a never-ending episode, which nobody wants. The first written mention that I found of Mcnevin came from 1580, which is surprisingly recent, I feel.
Well, that's interesting. That's amongst all these other witches we were talking about.
Because it's still 500 years ago, but in the scheme of things, it feels quite recent.
Well, yeah.
But it's important to bear in mind that in the Gaelic tradition, nothing was written down.
Yes.
So although the first written mention is 1580, it's likely that the stories are much, much older.
Yes, absolutely.
It's important to bear that in mind. Now, this written mention was written by a man called Alexander Montgomery.
Oh.
Who was a court poet for King James VI.
Very nice.
Who we talked about.
We have, yep.
And the reason that he wrote this down is pretty funny.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm just setting you up. Montgomery wasn't the only court poet for King James. He was joined by a man called Patrick Hume. And a common activity for them, and one of the ways they would entertain the court and the king, was something called flyting, which was basically just the two of them slinging funny insults and verse at each other.
Nice.
For everyone's entertainment. Kind of like comedians when they rag on each other.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. But in the 1500s. And it was in this foray that Montgomery spoke about Mcnevin. And it was written down. In his verses, because this was all rhyming and in poem form.
It's like a rap battle.
Kind of, yeah. It's a strange thing to think of now.
Yeah.
But this was the height of entertainment.
That sounds pretty good.
It's what they were literally paid for. That was their job.
Yeah, that would be hard to find, so, yep.
So in Montgomery's verses, he referred to Hume, his counterpart, as the baby of an ape and a fairy. As a way of insulting him greatly.
Nice.
Montgomery said that Hume was conceived, quote, during the Halloween procession of the king and queen of the fairies, the queen of Elphame and her husband, unquote. After this, Montgomery went on to say that Hume was then abandoned by the fairy king and queen, and then discovered by the Weird Sisters. Now, these are not the Weird Sisters that Shakespeare wrote about in Macbeth.
No.
Because Macbeth wasn't written for another 30 years.
Oh.
Ish. He's referencing a term that Scots writers used to write about characters who were sort of similar to the Fates in Greek mythology.
Okay.
They were called the Weird Sisters.
Interesting.
So it's these Weird Sisters that find Hume, the baby ape fairy. And what they do is they pass Hume on to Mcnevin.
Oh.
For her to care for, along with her congregation of nymphs and witches and everything unholy. And Mcnevin dedicates Hume to Hecate and Pluto in an unholy trial.
Oh my god.
And I think it's Hecate or Hecate and Pluto, they were Greek gods.
Yes.
Of Hecate was the Greek goddess of witchcraft.
Oh, okay.
And necromancy and magic. And Pluto was the Greek god of the underworld.
Ah.
Hades.
Got you. Not the god of small planets that get unclassified.
No. Maybe he's that now.
Maybe.
Maybe he's mad about it. But what's interesting about this first mention of Mcnevin is that it's very clear she's a separate figure from the Queen of Elphame.
Yes.
They aren't interchangeable. They're two different beings.
Yeah, because the Queen of Elphame gave her up. Or gave him up.
Yeah.
And then interesting.
Right?
Mm-hmm. They're kind of like mirror images of each other.
It's kind of how I have them in my head.
Yeah, they're almost in like parallel universes.
Mcnevin also has a separate history, and there are different theories about where the stories of her come from, which I will share with you now.
Thank you.
If you're game.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm hoping this isn't a too fact-heavy episode.
Well, I don't think so.
It's so interesting to me.
And hopefully to you.
Lots of people combine Mcnevin with Hecate, which makes sense because they were both seen as goddesses over very similar things.
Yeah, that seems fair.
They're just from different cultures,
Yep.
but they rule over a lot of the same aspects of life.
Yes.
And the name Mcnevin comes from Gaelic and translates roughly to daughter of the divine or daughters of the little saint.
Okay.
Now, lots of people think that she's related to or is the same figure as Nevin. I'm going to get slaughtered because this is Gaelic. But she's the Irish war goddess.
Okay.
I'm going to look up how you say it.
Do it.
Right, I'll just play it. I want to do it right. I don't like upsetting people.
Yawn.
Yawn.
Yawn. Yawn.
Okay?
Not Nevin. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. And that's another Celtic link. That there's this figure in Irish mythology that seems to be the same as the one in Scottish mythology.
It is interesting how they pass between the two of them, and often Wales as well.
Oh, so you're talking about like
The creature.
and Wales. What?
Yeah, like Scotland, Ireland, sperm whales.
I'm so tired. Yes, Welsh mythology. They all have this common Celtic ancestor that's changed and trickled down in all these different areas. But I like seeing the common links.
I do too.
There's also a suggestion, because the name Mcnevin and Nyaun sounds a lot like the Morrigan, who is another goddess from Irish mythology.
Oh, okay.
And she's a trio of goddesses, 3 sisters. So there's links there because the Morrigan has a lot of similar traits to Mcnevin and being the goddess of witchcraft and all these things. I hope that makes some sense. It probably didn't. I got very confused.
We're rolling with it.
There's one really interesting origin story which I want to share with you. And that's the possibility that Mcnevin was inspired by a human woman.
What?
Weren't expecting that.
I was not expecting that. Who could she be?
Well, we're in 1569.
Yep.
11 years before Montgomery spoke about Mcnevin at court.
Yep.
Which is one of the key factors for this being a possibility.
Well, yep.
A woman who was known as Mcnevin was burned at the stake in St Andrews for being a witch.
Okay.
And she'd been betrayed by her local apothecaries because they claimed that she was just too good at healing. And they reported her.
It's painful every time with every person.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh.
And she claimed that they were just jealous because she was better at healing than them.
Yep, obviously. Which is definitely what happened.
Yeah.
Oop.
Absolutely. She was apparently 100 years old.
Oh wow.
Very clever, but still accused of being a witch.
Right, we're going with it.
This is one person.
Yes.
But there's also stories of a woman called Kate Mcnevin, who apparently inspired the legends of Mcnevin. And there's differing versions of when she was executed as a witch. The dates range from 1563 to 1615 to 1715.
Oh, well.
So, varies wildly.
Yeah, that's hard to pin down, isn't it?
I saw a version of her story where it's claimed that she worked and lived in Monsey, near Crieff,
Okay.
as a nurse for a wealthy family that owned Inchbrakie House.
Interesting.
But a descendant of the family has been approached about this story
Oh, yeah?
that I'm about to get into. And this descendant is adamant that there are no records that Kate ever existed. That they didn't exist, she didn't exist, and everyone should just stop talking about it.
Ooh, that's going in too strong.
It's a bit sus.
Yeah, it's a bit sus.
To me, because why would you be that upset?
That's very sus, like there being no monster in Glam's Castle.
Right? So do you want to hear the legend of Kate Mcnevin?
No, I'm fine.
Well, that's the podcast. We will see.
Please share.
In the Kate Mcnevin story, she's about to be executed for being a witch. Even though the Laird of Inchbrakie fought for her life because she was a good person, he wasn't able to save her. At the moment of her death, she cursed the town of Monsey. She cursed everyone who had anything to do with her murder. She cursed them with never growing old and never being successful.
Oh.
However, she still had respect for the Laird, her employer, who had fought for her and tried to save her.
Uh-huh.
So she took a blue stone from the necklace that she always wore and she gave it to him. And a different version says that she managed to conjure the stone and spat it out of her mouth.
That's a lot cooler.
Right. And she told the Laird before she died that as long as he kept the stone, he and his family would be safe. And they'd always bear heirs to keep their property in the family. So the curse wouldn't affect them.
Bear heirs.
The story goes that the stone was eventually accidentally lost. And when this happened, the fortunes of the family started to decline.
Uh-oh.
Lots of different parts of their property had to be sold off. And they were never the same. And today, lots of places in and around Crieff are named after Kate Mcnevin.
Oh.
So lots of people have Kate Mcnevin as the origin of the Nicnevin legends.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. That could be. Could be. I like it. I'm not as thrilled with it as a theory as I was with the Ghillie Dhu.
Yeah, I think it's a bit tenuous.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh yeah, like maybe, but probably not. Whereas with the likes of the Ghillie Dhu, I was probably, but maybe not, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Especially because of the nature of Gaelic storytelling and tradition and things.
It seems crazy to me that such an important figure from mythology would appear then for the first time.
Yeah. And this person sounds very important, but there are lots of very important witches.
Well, I think the two could have happened. I don't know if that's the origin of the Nicnevin legend.
No, but there could have been that person.
Yeah, Kate Mcnevin could have existed. It's fully possible. I would well believe it.
Yeah, I agree.
But that is everything I have. That is everything I have on the Queen of Elphame and Nicnevin.
And Nicnevin?
I don't have as much information and stories on Nicnevin as I would like because she's really, really cool.
Yeah. We should make some.
Just make stuff up.
Well, there's lots of poems and stories and stuff about the Queen of Elphame.
True.
We could write some about Nicnevin.
Justice for Nicnevin.
Yep. Hashtag justice for Nicnevin.
I don't think that's a good hashtag.
Probably not.
Feels like a weirdly paced and strange content episode. I hope you like it. I hope you liked it, Kieran.
I liked it. I've had a good time. I enjoyed the story in the middle. It was very soothing.
I like telling stories.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad it wasn't at the end because I've been quite sleepy now. I might just fall asleep like a nice bedtime story. In a good way, because it was very soothing. Well read.
Okay, good.
Not that it was boring.
I'm glad you like it. I like doing it. I like including them because this is what Scottish fairies are. Like
Yeah.
it's all about storytelling, telling the stories, passing on the stories. It's a huge part of the culture and the history of it. So I feel like if we didn't do that at least once in the series, we're doing it a disservice.
I quite agree.
Because we should be telling stories.
Yep. We should. It should be a thing. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, listeners, for showing up again. If you like a little bit of extra fairy content, as Eilidh said, we have the Wild Hunt extra episode on Patreon. You should subscribe. It's the best.
We're hoping to have new content there in August.
Yep.
So that's just a couple days away.
Oh, yeah.
We took a break in July. We were hoping to get back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Yes.
Lots of fun things for you over there.
Yes.
It's a great way to support us if you like it. And we have merch.
Merch.
On the generallyspooky.com website.
Yep.
That's the most boomer thing I've ever said. You should go there anyway.
On one of them, their websites.
The .com website.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it?
And I think I set it up so that if you go to generallyspooky.com/TEA, you go to Bird and Blend and you can order some tea and support the podcast.
Yes, they are our lovely partners. They're great. Lots of tasty tea. You should head over there immediately and treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
We appreciate you greatly.
Yep.
Thank you for listening.
And we have 2 more episodes of the Scottish Fairies miniseries to go.
Yeah, baby. 2 left.
So we'll be back next week.
2 left, baby.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.